recruit people and what we do, I say there's 3 I's. The first one is income. People want unlimited income. Second one is they want independence. And the third one is they want to provide impact on people. And it's usually a combination of those on why people do certain things. And for me, the independence was really, really important. In 54 years, my gut has probably led me astray maybe 2 or 3 times. When your gut says something's not right, you need to follow that.
You're listening to the Sherpa Leadership Podcast, your guide to climbing higher in life and leadership. I'm Reed Moore, and alongside Chase Williams, we're here to help you break through obstacles, scale your potential, and lead with greater clarity and purpose. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sherpa Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Reed Moore, along with Chase Williams. Excited to bring you another amazing episode with another great leader. As always, we're here to help you climb higher in life and leadership, break through obstacles, and grow in your leadership journey. We have an incredible guest today, and Chase, you want to do the honors?
Yes, we have Mr. Paul Hansen, who Reed and I have both known for a number of years now. I don't know how long you've known Paul, but I've known him for a couple of years, and he's an incredible leader in business, in our church, in his family, and we'll let him kind of share some of the details. But we've been lucky and blessed to know Paul and learn from him and just be in his space. And so I have no doubt that just everything you'll be able to gain from his experience in life and just the way he approaches the topics that we have for you today are going to be valuable for everybody. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
So we've been going through our I Serve model and working through what it looks like to be a great organizational leader. And we're landing the plane with this series of episodes talking about what it looks like as a leader to embody the values, right? For people to be able to actually see the values, not just on a wall, but in a person. And so when we were talking about who we need to invite, there was one name that came to mind. It was like, we got to talk to Paul.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, you're welcome. No, it's an honor for me. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Paul, tell us just a little bit, anything you'd like to share about just kind of your journey in life, your journey in leadership, what you're up to these days, anything that would be relevant or otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you guys my story here. So I grew up in Moscow, Idaho. Grew up in a family, I would say lower middle class, maybe the higher upper part of poor. And then my parents got a divorce when I was 10. And my dad was starting an Edward Jones practice. And so I got to watch him do that. But I also had a younger sister. My mom ended up getting cancer and left the area. And I ended up being a parent, basically, to my sister as my dad was trying to start a business. And my dad also ended up with a girlfriend, so he ended up staying a lot away from us. So we were young kids kind of navigating life ourselves. I had lots of love. My dad was there for me, but I had lots of love. But I got to basically feel what it was like to be on my own and be responsible for people. And it ties into my leadership journey, so I tell you that.
Yeah.
Then my dad really kind of, I would say, woke up probably in my high school years and became a really influential parent and just a great leader in my life. And I got to watch him build a practice, an investment practice where people loved him and cared for him, and he was successful. So then I, at about 17, observed something that was really, really important to me. And that was my dad could not make it to my football games that were away. And he couldn't make it necessarily on hunting trips or fishing that was important to me during the weekdays or when I had holidays or whatever. And so I started investigating. And I found that there was a gentleman that was our next door neighbor who acted kind of like a father figure to me. His name was Rex, that he had a lot more freedom and flexibility. And so Rex made it to all of his kids' games and didn't matter where they were. And so I thought, that's pretty important to me. And so as I investigated, I realized I really didn't want to do exactly what my dad did. I loved that my dad had impact on people, but I also wanted independence. And when I recruit people and what we do, I say there's 3 I's. The first one is income. People want unlimited income. Second one is they want independence. And the third one is they want to provide impact on people. And it's usually a combination of those on why people do certain things. And for me, the independence was really, really important. So I was introduced to Northwestern Mutual at 17 years old.
Wow.
And Northwestern Mutual, I didn't even know what it was. But I knew, because people had told me that I respected, you should go talk to them because what's important to you, they probably can provide.
Okay.
So I showed up almost unannounced, my best clothes I had, and told them Dave Trail was the guy's name, my story. And Dave Trail was in charge of Moscow and Lewiston, and had a number of advisors, very successful. And he said, we have a great internship program. And he goes, you're young, but why don't you go to the University of Idaho, do the internship program, and if you like it, that'll be great. And if
Vandals,
you,
go Vandals.
go Vandals. And if you like it, he goes, you may want to take over for me someday. And it was like, oh, okay. So I did the internship, and I was very successful. And I have a love for the outdoors, and I was a fishing guide down in Hell's Canyon. And it was amazing how well those two things worked together, because I was fishing typically very wealthy people for salmon, steelhead, sturgeon, bass, that type of thing, typically 3 days with either their executive teams or their families. And when I got to know them, one thing you learn about somebody when you're fishing is you find out, it's kind of like golfing. You don't want to cheat at golfing, and you don't want to skimp on if you have to barbless hooks or releasing a fish or whatever, because people see you, right?
Sure.
They see your true character. And so I had a lot of successful people say, hey, I'd like to work with you. And so I ended up developing some really good clients at a young age. And because of that, became successful as an intern, really put myself through school all the way. And I did not graduate because I found I was so successful at it. But what I would say is that's how I got my start with Northwestern Mutual. And if you don't understand what Northwestern Mutual is it's an insurance company that started in 1857. And the reason it's called Northwestern Mutual was because in 1857, the Northwest was around the Chicago area.
Oh.
And Northwestern Mutual is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, started as a life insurance company. And for those that are farmers, they'll understand what a co-op is.
Sure.
And back then, almost all insurance companies started as a co-op. And that's what a mutual company is. And so with that said, our clients own our company.
Got it.
All right. And then I think it's about the 1970s we got into the investment business. And now we do really holistic financial planning for people. And we're much stronger, I'd even say, in the investment world than we are even in the insurance world. But it's holistic financial planning. Mm-hmm. And so the internship, I did this, decided I was going to go full-time, went full-time, met my wife, we got married, and then pretty soon I got tapped on the shoulder. It said, hey, how would you like to lead some people? And you guys know what that's like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it was like new to me.
Sounds fun. It'll be
Yeah,
easy.
it sounds fun. That's right. It is. It sounds easy. And they said, go find somebody. And I did. I went and found somebody, and I brought him in. And I realized, man, you do all kinds of stuff with him. You get to know him. You're intimate. Mm-hmm. All right? And I did that. And Justin was his name, and he became successful. And then they said, well, go find another one. And so I did. And I did another one, and I did another one, and then I got a Pat, and then I got, different people. And pretty soon, I found I was successful at this. And Moscow is not a really large town. Mm-hmm. So I went to Dave Trail, the guy that recruited me, and said, hey, Dave, I'd really like more opportunity. I think I want to move to Coeur d'Alene. And he said, no, you don't. You want to take over for me. And so at a very young age, he literally, in his mid-50s, said, this is ready for you.
Wow.
And
you were how old at the time,
I
give or
think
take?
27.
Okay, wow.
And it was a large organization, and I was way over my skis. Way over my skis, mainly with experience of life with conflict and how to deal with people. Mm. And that said, I took over, and in that first year, I developed Crohn's. My sister was diagnosed with cancer, and I was like in the fetal position for a lot of it. So I could go out and I could sell, I could find people, I could train them, I could develop them, but to really run the business, I found that I was over my skis. And I've still been on that journey even today.
Sure.
You know, I mean, working with people is incredibly rewarding and incredibly challenging.
Absolutely.
So, with that said, kind of bringing us closer to today, I did that, ran that position in basically northern Idaho, and I was able to take on Whitman County in Pullman, and was very successful at that, fortunately, and found a lot of really good advisors. Did that for 16 years. And Northwestern Mutual came along and said, hey, we would like to make a replacement for the entire region, which there's only 80 Pauls in the United States. And they, hey, would you consider this? And so my wife and I got together and prayed about this and talked to them quite a bit about what the opportunity was. And they said, if you want to do this, we want to put you through about a 3-year leadership school. And so, and it was intensive. But I said, okay, yeah, I'd like to do that. And so I did, and I took over about 10 and a half years ago. And the territory that I operate for Northwestern Mutual is from the Cascade Mountains to the Montana border, for almost similar to yours, from the Canadian border down to basically the Oregon border.
Got it.
And my job is to grow and develop that territory the best I can. And I have a team of people that do that. But it works very similar to the real estate world, that I'm kind of like the broker and they're kind of like the agents. And we're doing very similar things. And my job is to be involved in their lives and their businesses and help them be successful.
Awesome.
So that's kind of my story and kind of how it relates to what you guys do.
It's amazing. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure.
The first thing that stood out to me actually was kind of along the lines of embodying the values, because you started off with these high net worth individuals fishing, and they saw you in a certain light.
Yep.
Was that just, did that just come naturally to you at a young age, or is that something that you learned to, for the audio to match the video?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I say this because I think you guys can remember this, but kind of almost before the day of debit cards and credit cards, we either wrote checks or paid cash. And I remember going to the grocery store with my dad, and many times I would watch him count the change that he got back. And I would notice that he would go, hey, you overpaid me. And so that story multiple times stuck out, that we do the right thing. And it was interesting because I watched him, and I think you've said this, I've seen you say this, is you catch it, or maybe you guys have it in here, you catch it, it's not taught.
Yeah.
And so I caught that.
Yeah. You say, so unpack that a little more, Paul, because we hear that so many times in leadership training. We were talking before we started recording about like the concept of leadership versus the practical aspect of it. And so we always hear like, do the right thing. We was synonymous with integrity, and what a great story to have caught from your dad, right? That illustrated it practically.
Yep.
Why is it sometimes so hard to do that? Right? Because it sounds like, of course, do the right thing. Easy. Yeah. But, and if it were only so, right? Like, and as you go through a journey in leadership and you're taking care of other people and you have intimate relationships with them, sometimes, there's tougher decisions to make, or, we encounter these scenarios that, of course, we will and intend to do the right thing, but it's hard. Why is it hard?
Well, I know you guys have a faith, and I think there's this element of our flesh. And our flesh is, sometimes we can cut a corner, or we can take the extra change somebody gave me, and we can listen to that side of our bodies. And I think all of us have it. It's like, why do we all struggle? I think we both have the kind of these two angels on our, and go ahead, take the money. Go ahead and do whatever. But I think if you want to win for the long term, you have to mute, literally like our TV remotes, you have to mute that side of your brain that says, cut corners. So I think we have that choice. And we have to do something that basically does that. And part of it's accountability. Part of it's by being around people. You know, we were designed to be around people, and being around like-minded individuals is really, really important.
Yeah.
But if you're the leader, you also have to be the one that basically steps up and says something when things aren't being done right.
Yeah.
Because your culture is yours.
Sure.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. So you started recruiting people, bringing people into what would ultimately be your culture, and at a young age, my guess is that it wasn't as intentional as now, as maybe it is now. How did that evolve for you?
Let me get to the end of this for a second. I remember Lou Holtz said something, and I'm going to try to quote him the best I can, is if you recruit them good enough, you can't train them bad enough.
It's good.
And I think I've learned that. So I've made every mistake there is at recruiting. I wouldn't listen to my gut. I've profiled all kinds of people. I wouldn't listen to those things. But the reality is that usually those things are true. I know that ultimately, probably I'm 54 years old, and I think in 54 years, my gut has probably led me astray maybe 2 or 3 times. So when your gut says something's not right, you need to follow that, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is having team members. So as I've now developed enough team members and people that I trust, when they have hesitancy about somebody, maybe they see something in somebody that I don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, if you recruit them good enough, you can't train them bad enough. I mean, it's just that they will succeed.
Yeah. A lot of truth in that.
So
Paul, you mentioned that I think you said you were 27 or 29, right? You take over this organization in a leadership role,
Yep.
and you were over your skis.
Yep.
And I smile because I think almost every leadership role I've ever taken on, I was over my skis.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
way over, sometimes
Yeah.
a little over. And that can happen even if someone sees in you
Oh, yeah.
leadership capability and even a track record of some of those things, right? Typically
Yeah.
why you're offered roles like that. How did you show up in that time in your journey, right?
Yeah.
Like you knew you're over your skis.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fetal position. Gosh, I know exactly what you mean because I've been there. But how did you show up and move through that time when it was like, gosh, I'm treading water here, or maybe I'm underwater?
Well, I think it goes back to values. And I was fortunate, even though I had some absences in my childhood, I did have a father that loved me and cared for me, and I knew that. I didn't have a strong faith early, but it was about this time that I started developing my faith. And I think, Chase, the way I would say that is there's 3 things that we can do when we're faced with something. We can either think about it, we can feel something about it, or we can do something about it.
Yeah.
There's only 3. And I think I learned that action was there was more benefit to action than any of the others. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the ability of each leader's brain and how fast they process information, right? Some of us are faster, some of us are slower. And I've had that done on me. I kind of know where I sit. And ultimately, it's a game of chess, right? But the thing is if we sit around and we don't do anything, we basically, we struggle. And things causes us more pain.
Yeah.
And I think if we understand what the main things are that we have to do, I mean, I know that recruiting and developing will always get me through almost everything I do right now. And so if I have a tough day, a tough week, a tough month, a tough year, whatever, if I stick to recruiting and developing in the role that I play and developing teams and developing people, and I stay true to that, I'm able to work through it. And I think that's what I learned, but it wasn't intentional. It was by happenstance that I learned that.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
So when you look at, I was thinking about looking at values, right? So one of the things that can happen and cap somebody's leadership is that they adhere to maybe an undefined set of values, and people for a while they can see it, which is great. But then it becomes hard for them to actually know what it is that they can sink their teeth into. When did you make the transition of, like, hey, people are following me. What are they actually seeing in me that maybe I need to multiply in order to take this from a local business to taking over this region?
Yeah. Well, great question. And I think it's a real question, Reed, that takes me to Proverbs. And Proverbs, there's something in there that where there's no vision, the people will perish. Sure. Right? But it's interesting. People will join the leader and they will join the mission of an organization. But the reason they stay is because of the vision.
Yep.
They join for what it is and who they are, because everybody ultimately wants something for themselves, right? And I don't blame them. We all do. But they need to see that path. And how do I get what I want? And how do we create a win-win environment? And so I think ultimately, some of the stuff I've read here that you guys are working on is you have to be evolving the vision and being able to show people. I call it spaces and faces. And when you're building a organizational chart, sometimes you have faces in some spaces, and sometimes you don't have a face for the space.
Sure.
And so you got to create the space, and people need to say, well, what's going on there? Well, we need somebody to grow and develop into that space. And they go, oh, well, could that be me? Well, yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yep.
What are I mean, just incredible that you had the mentor that said, nope, you're taking over my business. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was really fortunate. I've been fortunate to have a lot of mentors, but yes.
It's amazing. So it makes me think, at some point you're going to say to somebody else, nope, you're taking over my business. What are when it comes to their values, when it comes to their vision, comes to their leadership, what are you going to be looking for in that person to take over what will ultimately be a much bigger opportunity?
Well, in the interim, because I'm at a spot today that I could walk away. Fortunately, it feels really good to be there. When that happened, I almost broke down into tears, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And what I've done is with somebody we all know is Bill Thrall, and I have spent quite a bit of time sitting on my deck talking about this, I know people, he says, that retire and would kill for your job. You get to impact people. You influence people all the time. So what are you going to do if you retire, right? And so I really want to stay in this for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've been doing to answer your question is I'm always trying to work myself out of a job.
Yep.
I just always am like, how do I replace myself? At first, that's scary. It's really scary. But what you realize is the larger the organization you build, the larger the need there is for somebody that's not even on the org chart yet.
Yeah.
And that's really been my role is I've in a sense worked myself out of several roles. And so there's people that, hey, I'd like to do what you do. Well, it might be 9 things that I do. Do you want to do 3 of them? Do you want to do 2 of them? Do you want to do 1 of them? Do you want to do 4 of them? And right now, there's nobody that's really ready to take over all 9.
Sure.
Right? But there's people that are stepping up. And I just, January 1st, had a transition where somebody's taking on a bigger chunk of what I did. And it's nice because now it frees me up to do more offensive things. Not that that wasn't offensive, but I get to reinvent myself.
Yeah. And so those roles that you're finding people for, these pieces of the big role, right? How would someone step into a role like that, and how would you describe the values that you would want them to model inside of your organization and your culture that you are modeling for them, right? Like what are some of the things you would point to that would be important beyond their ability and skill with the things at hand?
Well, I like that you pointed out ability, skill, and then also values. I think I mentioned to one of you earlier, but I went around and asked a couple of people in our organization, said, hey, I was going to be doing this podcast here later today. Is there anything you want to that you would want to hear if you listened to it. And they said, we'd rather hear the softer side than the X's and O's, because they said that's what you embody. And I said, oh, okay, well, thanks. And I think here's a place to kind of do that.
Yeah, love it.
I had one of my coaches and mentors teach me something. They said that there are some things that are not teachable. And that is, you can't teach somebody to care about others. They have to come from the heart, that they really care about serving others. And they may have good talents in sales, but just to put somebody in a leadership role, to me, they have to give a damn. They have to care, right? And so I would not hire somebody in a big role in our organization that hasn't grown up organically within what we do. I'll hire somebody new for a more entry-level position, but if you're going to be an executive in our organization, you've got to come from within.
Yeah.
And I would rather forego the growth and keep the culture than to sacrifice some culture for growth.
Why is that?
I think it goes back to maybe an element of control. I know what's going to happen. I know you start leading a lot of people. You know character, but you're never going to have all of it nailed. But I think that the other thing is I truly believe, and this is probably the bigger side of it, is I believe that culture is the most important thing, and it'll attract the right people. And so if you're going to attract the right people, yeah, you may go through a slump of not finding the right people, but when you do find the right people, they're attracted to the right culture.
Yeah.
And I believe there's timing and chemistry. So people come into your guys' line of work because it's the right timing. But there's also a side of it is chemistry.
Sure.
So there has to be timing and chemistry for that to happen.
Yeah.
So
Well, so I'm curious, Paul, and I'm just going to assume that through the course of your experience, which is vast and for a long period of time in leadership, that as much as we would like to think we always make the perfect hire in every role and opportunity, that's not been my experience. So
Far
you
from
guys
it.
probably have nailed it. I've screwed it up a few times. And so I'm curious if by chance you've ever hired the wrong person in the wrong role, specifically around embodying the values. How have you handled those situations as a leader, both to correct that or protect the culture that existed there? Like, share with us a little bit about kind of your approach on the occasion that it just didn't go the way that you hoped.
yeah, I'm writing two names down so I stay to the. I'm going to give you two examples of how I've handled it differently. And yes, I have made the wrong hires.
All right, I'm not alone. I'm not
I
alone.
thought you were going to crack the code for us.
Yeah. So a couple things. Let me start off with. I now trust some of the profiling things that we do way more than I've ever done, and we rely heavily on two profiling tools. One is called the life languages, if you're familiar with those, and the other is called the culture index. And both of them are really helpful when we use them together. And we start I have two daughters that just got married, and so part of the father of the bride talking was I sat down with both of them when they were 12 years old and started building out what the ideal husband list looked like. So when they're 12, they basically are not biased, right?
Yeah.
And so they can be very objective. And so one thing that we've done is we've become very objective about what we're looking for. And then we trust the tools to let us do that. And I think when we have not listened to the tools and we've gone with, oh, it just feels good. Yeah, I'm using, the emotion. We've made the wrong hire.
Sure.
And I can think of one person in particular that in the last couple of years that we brought into a kind of a mediocre level that was from the outside is we didn't listen to the tools. We didn't. And we were like, we really need this person. and we felt this urgency to hire somebody and just fill a spot. And the reality was is that it was the wrong hire. It affected the culture. It created stress in our leadership team, and it was the wrong move. And so we sat down and talked to this individual and made some changes ultimately, which was the right thing. And everybody's heard this: be slow to hire and quick to fire, right? And this person wasn't a bad person at all, but was not the right person for our organization. Now I'm going to flip that around, and I'm going to talk about another person. So this is a person that's been with me for 18 years, and one of those people that raise their hands, and I know who they are. So from a profiling, from a value standpoint, this person's been around for a long time, played a lot of different roles. It was like, hey, I want to do some of the roles that you do. And came in and did this for about 2 years. And the reality is that it's a she was not thriving in that role. She did a phenomenal job, but she wasn't thriving. She wasn't using all of her God-given talents and abilities. Nobody was complaining, but it was kind of cool because we sat down and said, how you feeling about it? And just talked about it. And what we discovered is we needed to make a tweak. And if you've read Good to Great, getting her into another seat, which we both agreed was the right decision. She's thriving now.
Yeah.
Thriving. And I'm so happy for her and her husband and her team, and everything that she's doing that was just awesome. So I think that I knew she was the right person for the organization. Just recognized, and she recognized too, that she was in the wrong seat.
Sure.
And so I have multiple examples, but sometimes you got to have somebody leave the team, and sometimes you've got to just move them to a different seat.
Yeah.
Well, I think that really illustrates the importance of this idea of values, right? We're talking about embodying the values as leaders, because if you're a strong, if you strongly embody the values of a culture, an organization, then there's an opportunity for you to find the right seat. But if you have a lot of skill and talent in a particular role, but you don't embody the values of the organization, there's actually no place for you on the bus.
That's well said.
Right? So when you start to think of like the importance, and they need to go together, right?
Yeah.
You want to do excellent at the job and embody the values.
Yep.
But you think of it, that illustration, those two examples as the order of priority.
Right. Yeah.
Is really stark contrast.
Yeah, it is. It is. The only way we really learn is from our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I wish there was a better way, but
I remember my grandfather told me at a young age, he just was like, you're going to have to choose. Do you want to learn from others, or do you want to make all the mistakes yourself? And, we've all heard something like that. And as I get older, I try to learn from others. Yeah. But boy, when you're younger, holy smokes.
Yeah.
I had to make all of them myself, right?
So my mother used to tell me that the only way I learned anything is by taking the field trip.
Yeah.
And I think it was her motherly way of
Yes.
telling me I was stubborn and hard-headed.
Yeah.
But like you,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, there's so many other people I can learn from. Maybe I don't have to hit my head on every rock,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've run into a few people, more than a few, and it's almost like a badge of honor. Like, well, I learned things the hard way. And one time I was so frustrated with this person that was sitting in front of me, and I just said, "Are you condemning everybody in your life to suffering because you're unwilling to learn?" It turns out in that instance it actually went over well.
Oh, good.
It was
Good.
it was one of those moments where you're like, this could be problematic.
Good timing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, right? Like as we grow and mature, and maybe a little bit, hopefully in humility,
Right.
we start looking around and thinking like, hey, Paul just went through this
Yeah.
thing. He learned something. Maybe I should call Paul.
Yeah.
Maybe I should figure this out, because learning the hard way, I have plenty of experience at that, but I don't necessarily want all my leadership lessons to be that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you imagine this just kind of struck me in this part of the conversation is if we're leading others, which means we're likely teaching them, guiding them, coaching them, consulting them, whatever, mentoring them, whatever word you would want to connect to it. All of that is leadership in some form. And we're hoping that they can learn from us, those that we lead. If we're not embodying that value by learning from others,
Right.
right? Like if,
Yeah.
if Reed and I can't learn
Yeah.
from Paul, but then we go and lead our people, then how would we expect them to learn from us?
Yeah.
So it's a good example
Yeah.
of what we're talking about here. And
Yeah.
and sometimes, age, maturity, and just, banging your head enough times starts to push you in that direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that. I think of my journey in this, and I remember one of these mentors that I had said that, you become a leader and you're successful. The best leaders develop leaders who develop leaders who develop leaders who develop leaders. And there's a cascading effect. Yeah. And it was kind of a humbling experience that, hey, I was thinking pretty proud of myself, for what I'd done. And it was really good. But I think that what I've learned is I call it levels of leadership. There's a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
But I think that there's about 3 different levels of leadership. Can you lead yourself in a small organization? Can you start to lead others that start expanding? But then can you really get into the third level is really more of the psychology of it, and more into, can you get the most out of people so that they become the best that they can be?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard, and it's a maturing process.
All right, everybody. That was part 1 of our interview with Paul Hansen. Stay tuned for part 2 next month. And thanks for listening to the Sherpa Leadership Podcast. Remember, if this episode inspired you, we would love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your favorite leader. You can always get more tools and resources at SherpaConsultingGroup.com. And remember that leadership is a journey. Every step you take matters. So keep climbing. We'll see you next time.